Thank you, and great to have you here again. And actually, you provided us with a small cultural shock, because it is a German-American encounter. So you have Alexandra, who has worked for so long, achieved so much, and giving a self-critical, cool assessment about the law, and basically a long list why we still have to be unhappy. Markus Beckedahl, he matched this already a bit more optimistic, I have to say. Yeah, so this was, but that was German civil society in preaching form. And then we got the American cultural shock by someone who speaks out openly, speaks about values, not about rules. We are so boring in America, in Germany, Susanna. That's the truth. And so it's not about you, or it's very much cultural. So such speeches are very rare in Germany. So I'll switch back to German, but I had to share that directly with you. So
I just wanted to share this.
Look, I'm speaking actually, and I want to try at least a bit to match what Susanna has said.
So I'm now speaking to you from the building, and even from an office that was, or could have been, the office of Müller-Arma, who was Secretary of State, who at the time, after the war, actually turned the rules of, the market economy into practice, the practical rules. And this happened right here in this house. And this was the consequence from fascism, the Nazi rule, which had become possible with capitalism becoming. So the consequence of the liberal economists was that we have to do everything to make sure that this never happens again. We don't want to see such concentrated powers in the markets. Just checking with Max whether, yeah, the connection holds. Great. Some of the videos were switched off, so I wasn't sure. So there was a number of other reasons, anti-Semitism and more, and the fascist structures. I'm not going to go into repetition here, but one of the consequences, one of the conclusions drawn by the Federal Republic of Germany afterwards was that, yes, we are pro-market economy, however, under a very sound and solid control system. And the concept behind that is the social market economy, which is not to say that market economy had been harmful and ecologically damaging. Alexandra can say more. In many ways, it is the fact that being active on the market, this is something that we haven't really fulfilled. However, the target, one thing we achieved is that the state has come up with rules, making sure that private enterprises work for the benefit, for the well-being of the majority. So now with the European single market had been brought forward, progress was made here in this house. We saw the same question. So does that mean we still have democratic rules? The liberalization of trade was adjusted and additions were made. And this is why, when it comes to environment protection, protection of consumers, anti-discrimination rules, Europe plays a leading role. Anything that we've agreed upon together with the member states and under the monitoring of the European Union, of the Commission. It's not perfect, but it was the first time that we managed to make sure that the rules for a market that goes beyond our borders have been set democratically, and that we have made sure that internationally we have these rules and they're followed. Now, looking at the new forms of capitalism on the internet, so we have radicals who asked, well, is this our moment? Can we now have a room without state control? So, no, the state does interfere. The internet is an open room, a public room, so this is why those rules must hold. So, this was the first step taken here. Now, looking at the Digital Market Act, we have seen rules for competition, especially with the larger actors and the digital services. What we've seen here is more protection of consumers. And at the same time, we protect the freedom of opinion and the liberties of the players. And the focus point is not just each and every single rule. What we've seen every now and again, repeatedly, in European legislation is that the first pieces of legal acts, they were rather weak. They didn't bring about much change, but slowly, bit by bit, with the help of European democracy, things were brought forward. And the decisive thing is that we've managed this deal. This deal has been struck with might and muscle, and more might and muscle than people would have believed just a few days ago. And the centerpiece of this business model is that we need to prohibit this kind of profiling, advertisement, the surveillance capitalism, as Professor Zubov called it. And this is something we've only begun to change. So we still see the centerpiece of the business model. However, these firms, these providers are now monitored, and there's an institution, there's a place you can turn to with complaints. And what the providers and entrepreneurs will find very unpleasant is that in a couple of years, Alexandra and her followers will come back and check on what does not work, which is probably hell for everybody who thought they were above the law. So now that we have this act, which is brought about in co-decision mode with the 3 European institutions, and now we'll see what the experience tells us at the level of companies, of providers and users. And then we can still make the framework more stringent. Also, NGOs can come in.
So this is the central issue. So we have rules which are enforced. They're not perfect, but they are there. And they are much better than what we have in many other parts of the world. And we have an institution which will monitor the implementation of these rules, and we have a parliament which will also monitor the European Commission, because the large platforms will be monitored by the European Commission, which is also the case for digital markets. And that means we have learned our lessons from the GDPR experience, where a company was established in Ireland and couldn't have cared less about GDPR, and then we couldn't have enforced it anyway. But now we have European, pan-European oversight and monitoring and supervision. And by self-financing, by obliging them to self-finance, companies can't even say we don't have the money. Or authorities can't say that either. In Europe, we always say, after the law is before the law. And I think the democracy can catch up now. And I think something else will happen as well. Now that in Europe we have adopted this law, a lot of people around the world will wonder, why don't we have such a law? They will ask for getting the same rules. And if then there is democratic legitimization of these rules, they will maybe even adopt stricter laws. democracy has won here in Europe, and hopefully it will win in other parts of the world as well. There was it was a very tough battle for Alexandra. There were points where they were in the minority at the beginning, but they reached openness, acceptance for their suggestions, and we had problems in the Council of Ministers. But we were able to push some things through, and we in Germany were not the ones who blocked everything. In Parliament, of course, there were lobbies as well who managed to gain some victories. You wanted to go a lot further when it came to personalized advertising, for example, Alexandra. And of course, you had to make concessions due to the lobbies who just have so much power behind them. So there were some losses, but that's not what matters here. What matters here is that we managed to have a very ambitious regulative framework for the digital world in Europe. And that makes sure that other parts of the world will look at us, will also adopt a similar regulation. Let's have a look what will happen in Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, South Africa, and all other democracies around the world. They will wonder, why do the Europeans do that, and why don't we do that? So eventually, Shoshana will also be able to favor such a law in the US, and then democracies will reach out to each other, will connect, and will make sure that whatever money Elon Musk has available, he will not be able to influence our democracy anymore. We haven't won the battle. And of course, democratic institutions are endangered, and they are always in danger of being bought by Elon Musk or others to a certain extent. But there is an opportunity here. There is a big opportunity here to use our European democracy and democracies around the world and to shape this cyberspace in a democratic way. And by the way, this also applies to finance online. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and so on is the same principle. People think they don't have to take on responsibility. They can just create their own financial space without any rules, any liability whatsoever. And the central question here is, are we able to find a way of democratically regulating this digital form of capitalism, just as we did today with the DSA and DMA? So that is where we have taken a very important step forward as a parliament, as democratic society, and I think there is something that we can still achieve. We can achieve a lot more. And well, as a German, it's always hard to be proud or to find some pathos in my speech, but I think we can be proud, and you should be proud of what you have achieved, and I think it is a day to be happy.